Alright, welcome guys. If you have not seen part 1 before we start, it's going to be in the link in the description. Please check that out. This particular segment is based on part 2 of an article series in Unlimited Hangouts called City-States Without Limits, and this is written by Iain Davis. Now, I'm not going to cover every concept here, but if you're interested, I highly recommend you to go read the article. Iain makes some very powerful points and arguments that really help me form a more powerful perspective on the state of the world today, as well as the plans for the tech oligarchy that we're currently existing under. Now, for this segment, we're going to use the term city-states. And it's important that you understand that this is essentially involving the idea of freedom cities, human settlements, 15-minute cities, resilient cities, and charter cities. For all intents and purposes, when I say city-states, that's what I mean, any of these things out of this list. And the differences are minuscule, and I would assume that you just gain a more powerful understanding of the actual concept by treating it just as one. Now, if you remember from part 1, you should know that this idea and this concept of city-states are really intertwined with some very questionable ideologies and tool sets. In part 1, Iain talks about a variety of these concepts and ideologies. I didn't go into the details that Iain went through in his particular article, but there was talk of special economic zones, and you should definitely understand that when you hear the word special economic zones, that honestly should be included in the list of what we're talking about when I say city-states, right? They are that closely interconnected, right? The structure may vary a little bit in terms of the ownership structure, but it does encompass what we're talking about, and it's the closest, most prevalent model that we have today to compare what we're looking at when we think about city-states in terms of what to expect from a city-state period. Now, in part 2, we see more information on the pressure that is really incentivizing and the strategies currently being employed to advertise and build these particular cities. And I want to make no mistake, these are essentially cages that are made using the same technology that is luring us in with this idea of comfort and convenience. I remember going to a Whole Foods one time and seeing the palm scanner for the first time, and I said, "Wow, that's creepy." And I was saying that, and I said that I think I had like 3 different interactions. The first one, the woman just looked at me like I was crazy, like like, what's creepy about it? The second one, I didn't quite say it was creepy. I just went up and I asked the guy, I said, "Hey, what do you, like, what's going on with this particular scanner? Do a lot of people use it?" And I'm not sure if he was just in salesperson mode, so he didn't really think about it, but he was just like, "Oh yeah, it's great. It's really convenient, especially for the older people who, forget their wallet or something like that." And I meant these first 2 interactions left me a bit disheartened about really the state of our society. But the third one was, it was a younger person, looked like she could have been like just literally like 18 or something, and she said, "Yeah, it's creepy." And I was like, thank goodness, there's hope. But you need to understand that these are this idea of convenience is going to essentially be the cage that they use. When we talk about Skynet, after this idea of the nuclear, it wasn't really a nuclear war, it was just really a nuclear attack by Skynet. after it killed 3 billion people, they enslaved humanity, and they were successful to a great extent. And this system, it's built with an understanding that chaos does happen. The people who build these systems, the people that know these systems, they don't live under really the illusion that we live under. They actually they plan for it, right? The idea of bunkers and things of that nature is really an indicator for really the mindset that these guys have. But when we're talking about people and people that want to rule over other people, the idea of fear, or not fear, but desperation, ruling over people that are desperate, is something that's going to come up in this particular segment here. But it's something that these guys really, really understand. And this concept here, this is Sleepy going into conspiracy land a little bit, but false flag attacks, this can definitely be something that pressurizes people into this concept of city-states. The idea of enslaving humanity using this quote-unquote city-states, this is going to be great for people who are simply desperate and looking for refuge. We just have to listen to the rules, and we get a place to we get a place to sleep and food to eat. The level of control that these people would have over this particular development, we'll call it, it's going to be insane, and it's not going to be simply the leaders you're confronting or even able to see. These are going to be people that are tiers above the people in the levels of authority that we see, and that's what AI and tech is really making even more possible right now. And that's what's so scary about it. It's allowing for even deeper centralization of power when they get competent about artificial intelligence in general. And I think the most disturbing thing about this particular initiative right now, what's happening, how it's being sold and really pushed to society, is really just how well it pairs with existing narratives. And when we talk about this idea of safety and security, that's something that we as humans naturally gravitate towards in a lot of situations. And that's something that, honestly, the government has created models around really keeping people under control, right? The Total Surveillance Act, or the Total Information Awareness Act, after 9/11 is a prime example of this, right? We have people who are scared enough to give up their right to privacy, and it does appear that this could be another case for really what's happening today. And I have that written down a little bit later, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But in terms of the existing narratives today, or the existing pressures today, we'll call it existing pressures, city-states, they're a solution to this idea of one, city growth, right? Because when a city grows, politicians are looking for a way to sell comfort and security with their administration, right? They want people to feel safe, and but not they don't want people to feel safe. They want to give people honestly, nowadays politicians' biggest job is keeping a job, so they really want to make themselves feel like someone who provides safety and security or they want to sell themselves as a provider of safety and security. And this is very much something that we see, and this is very much something that we can't see. When we talk about city growth, these aren't, if you've likely been exposed to this idea that, we have cities that are going to grow in population and density, and people naturally want to feel safe, and this is seen as a way to sell safety to the people. And this is despite the idea of special economic zones being infamous for the criminality that really does take place in these particular areas in general. Number 2, the idea of human health. The most recent crisis that I'm sure everyone remembers, it seems to have been taken advantage of to promote ways of living that decrease the chances of sickness. And the tech oligarchs seem to be using this fear to really promote these cities as a place of safety and security. And there are quite a few reasons to be worried about the amount of wiggle room that they're getting in terms of privacy and what they're able to do. When it comes down to health and safety, I remember reading about the fitness tracking app or watch, and it was so detailed that at some point people at assuming the tech company itself, but essentially people connected to that app were able to literally document when a person was having sex. And that was it gets pretty scary when you start to uncover what comes with tracking health and safety and what it could be potentially used for. In this particular situation with city-states, it's being sold as something that would allow health agencies to act faster and be more efficient in the cases of any emergency. And of course, this is all to keep us safe. And the number 3 is really the one that Iain brings up in the framework of it scares me the most, just because of how immediate how apparent it is, and how observable a lot of the things are, and just how we're looking at today in terms of now getting towards the end of October and 2025. But refugees, the narrative here, it's being manufactured. First off, refugees are an excellent test subject, right? They're desperate, they're in fear, and the populace that is receiving refugees is in a situation to where they want them documented, or there are large swaths of the population that want them documented, and they don't mind the idea of them giving up their freedom in that documentation. So if it comes down to spying on refugees, you get a lot less pushback from the general populace. I think ICE is being laughed at right now, but when it comes down to their ability, the CIA was also laughed at for quite a while. I mean, just they took a while to gain their legs and be really thought of as a threat to society, to where people often look at them as the people who carried out the assassination of JFK in a lot of situations. But they started in a place to where, think about a college kid who goes and tries to buy drugs for the first time, and the drug dealer looks at them and they instantly know that, oh, okay, cool, we're gonna, instead of actually like marijuana, we're gonna give this kid oregano, like this idea, that's what it really makes me think about when I think about the origin of the CIA and how they came up. ICE is, like I said, being laughed at now, but they are a Palantir. They are supporters of Palantir, and it could be easily said that Palantir is a supporter of ICE. They want more information, and they want them to be more competent. For those that don't know, Palantir can more accurately be understood as the private business sector of the CIA. The first 6 years, Palantir, the CIA was essentially Palantir's only contract. They were going to this, the Peter Thiel and Alex Karp, I believe, or whoever they had. They were having meetings with the CIA on either, I think it was a weekly or bi-weekly basis for the beginnings of Palantir. When the CIA needs to do big brother things without pesky Congress or laws to get in their way, they'll move to the private industry. And they have done that. Edward Snowden was proof of that. Edward Snowden did not get his check signed by the CIA. He got his check signed by a private business. I forget exactly what the private business was called, but you need to understand that everything Palantir can be more accurately understood as everything that the CIA wants. And these aren't good people. These aren't moral people. You need to be very worried when you hear about CIA, ex-CIA politicians. Edward Snowden is still wanted, and he is still getting refuge in Russia. There has been no correction in behavior from the CIA from what Edward Snowden revealed. We need to understand that Palantir is essentially the CIA, and this is exactly what we're looking at when we look at ICE expanding. And it's messy now, but I think it gets less messy and only scarier at this point. And assuming that nothing else happened, but this is deep state sanctioned. ICE is deep state sanctioned. There's more trouble here than the idea of ICE, because we have essentially a history where the Rockefellers are involved in quote-unquote making a tangible difference in the lives of urban immigrants, displaced people, and receiving communities worldwide. In regards to the UN, this is very interesting here because Iain notes how that the UN's own reporting, right, a branch of the UN reports that there is no upward trend in severity or frequency regarding natural disasters in any case. But the UN is referring to refugees in a lot of cases as escaping climate crisis. Now, the same report that really notes, or not, I'm not sure if it's the same report, but Iain also notes how the UN is literally telling us that all of the conflicts that are causing mass displacement are man-made. they are going on stage and saying that there is a climate crisis. Whenever someone comes in front of you, some representative comes in front of you, and they seem to have a narrative that provokes only fear, it seems to be that they're trying to sell something through that particular lens of being afraid. And they've been working on this for quite some time. It seemed like we really need to stop talking about molecules and chemicals that are invisible to the human eye and don't cause immediate consequences. And because when we talk about real power and changing how we treat the environment, the debate should no way be centered around invisible molecules and chemicals. The debate doesn't need to be quote unquote climate change. The problem, or the debate rather, if it even can be considered a debate at this point, is the fact that there are no fish in our streams. The fact that if my kid drinks from any surface level water in the city, the chances are astronomically high that they will be hospitalized. The reason why we're probably not seeing these particular concepts come up in conversation is that they would be immensely inconvenient to companies like Monsanto. Our politicians are essentially salespeople for Monsanto as well as the weapons industry abroad. That's really those are their real. Those are the people. Those are their real constituents, right? The people who they're really responsible for abroad. We have to come to an understanding that the people, the very same people who are supposedly responsible for our well-being, are really just employed to find the most clever ways to do the exact opposite. Now, the UN is highly reliant on this. I really like the term mask of civility that I've heard Chris Hedges use, because the UN is highly reliant on this mask of civility in terms of being on the frontier of sustainable development.
The person who has been the inspiration behind the Sustainable Oceans Alliance, who really has something called Terramar Project. She controls the oceans around the world. If you were to look up the website, you have the option to buy up parts of the ocean through her. And therefore I invite my dear friend, Ghislaine Maxwell, to tell us how we can own the oceans.
I'll do my best. First of all, Your Excellencies, Presidents, Lords, ladies and gentlemen, I just would like to thank you so much, and it's such an honor to be here. I'm here representing civil society. I really wanted to focus my attention on the ocean. Under UNCLOS, it is ours, it belongs to each and every one of us, and the assets belong to us too. To sign up, to get your passport, to make your voice heard so that the UN and each ambassador can hear us what we want, and all politicians know that no sustainable ocean means we won't vote them back into power. If we won't vote them back into the power, then they're out. We'll find someone who will.
And this clip is Ghislaine Maxwell, for those who don't know, at the UN, saying with her whole chest that she will, not she, they, because she knows that she has support of the people in the UN when she talks and when she speaks and when she makes these kind of literal threats to the people who would vote against her. That's her telling the UN that they need to control and save the oceans. Now, this isn't talking about I can only assume that this isn't talking about stopping the oil drilling that happens in the ocean, or putting more regulation, or more heavily regulating them. This is about more power and control for very sick, weird people. I'm not going to put the UN under one broad brush. I think the idea of a report coming out that really does look bad for the narrative of climate change is indicator that they aren't one broad, that we can't paint everyone in one broad stroke. But we should understand something. The people and the systems in place, they give people like Ghislaine Maxwell confidence to say this in a room full of representatives. Another thing Iain notes is that the idea of city-states have been listed as human settlements by the UN, and this listing is important because this is how they categorize the cities that we live in today. So this idea of putting us in city-states it's natural to them. It's natural as breathing. Why wouldn't they want to be controlled by a CEO king? Why wouldn't they? It's highly disturbing when you think about how much power and influence that these people have. We also have this idea of China that Iain brings up, of really what's happening in China and what's taking place in China. And Iain notes that it's not as bad as a lot of people who want to really find a villain in China really portray, but it's not roses, right? They do have a significant amount of technology behind surveillance, behind total surveillance. They just have not enacted it in a way. And what makes them so sophisticated in terms of above a lot of other people are the fact that they have profiles. They have been collecting and they maintain profiles on people. So in terms of the technology in itself, the idea of social credit scores is a much larger threat than the other people who are currently trying to put in place or design social credit score systems for their populations. When it comes down to this idea of city-states, China has a model there, and with this model, you need to really understand is that they call it something. It's the 4-3-2-1 system, and I'm just gonna say I'm gonna just list the 4 here, but all of them are important. But I think 4 is really something that gives you at least an understanding of just how deep this goes. They say, they use these numbers to really signify the connectedness, and with 4, it represents 4 components that are connected, and those 4 components are the government, CCTV cameras, the internet, and the Internet of Things, or devices connected to the internet. What's happening in terms of with this particular city-state example here is it can't be dismissed as an outlier. It has to be really understood as a model, a frontier, like on the frontier of what city-states should look like. This is according to the Smart City Expo World Congress. I'm just picturing just a bunch of people in suits trying to figure out how to enslave their population and just having a summer field trip, like I can't see anything else but that right now. The UN is really touting this idea of frontier technology or frontier tech. This is technology that's, like I said before, this isn't technology that's going to be controlled by the authority that you see. It's going to be controlled by tiers above that authority that you see, which is you start to realize these are very disconnected people that look at you as numbers on a graph or on a screen. Now, frontier technologies, this is quote-unquote, currently include among others, the Internet of Things, sensor networks, machine-to-machine communication, robotics, artificial intelligence, virtual and augmented reality, 3D printing, geographic information systems, remote sensing, autonomous unmanned vehicles, drones, blockchain, cryptographic computing, and big data processing and visualization. I want to note there's a story here. It's a story, and this is it's a fictional story, and I'm laughing when I say fictional because it gets less fictional the more I know, honestly. It's called there's a story written by this guy Cory Doctorow. I hope I'm pronouncing that last name right, but it's called Unauthorized Bread. And that's like the bread that you eat. And this particular story is really following an immigrant. The only place that they can afford to live is in an apartment where all of the technology in the apartment is controlled to really a very high extent, right? And a high enough extent to where the toasters, they will only cook authorized bread. GMOs are a thing. Genetically modified food. Genetically modified organisms exist. They are doing insane things in labs with organisms, including making them glow in the dark. The people who fund this research, they're not people who care about your freedoms. They're people who care about profits. They care about getting a bigger yacht than their friends that have bigger yachts than them, right? They're not thinking about normal people. They're not thinking about everyday people. The people who would look at this book and really think like, wow, that seems like a great model, a great system. Seems like a great business model. These are the people who are looking for really more control over society. This is when we talk about the word globalist. I always want to say that this is it, right? People who are looking for more effective ways to control the natural world and the people inside of it. These people have intentions to circumvent democracy because democracy has proven to be really a pain or a tremendous, or not a tremendous, but even the level of democracy that we have, which is, really just a functional oligarchy at this point, it has proven to be an inconvenience to them.
It's not even that democracy is bad, it's just that it's very weak.
These people are interested in creating a model that overcomes democracy, and they found one, right? So the special economic zones are an indicator for a model of really overcoming the democratic country that you're really inside of, right? The sovereign nation, the idea of that having impact on what you do, and I believe it was the first article in, I want to say Nigeria. It was definitely Africa, but I think it was Nigeria specifically. They talked about the special economic zone in this area, and they said, you're no longer in Nigeria when you step into this zone. And that is, you need to understand that this is a very effective model for these people, and they have intentions on using this model. This idea of city-states, it is seen as, and is being really hailed as, a more powerful way for people to control, or not control, but people to is being advertised as a more powerful way to increase safety and security. And it's disturbing. It's disturbing when you think about the idea of these things having connections. But also, as we talked about in the first segment, it's more disturbing when you realize that these people are looking for orbital weaponry, right? They are looking for orbital weapons that essentially make modern warfare, the way we think about modern warfare, inert. It won't matter anymore. And these are people who are connected to Elon Musk with SpaceX, of course Peter Thiel, and of course the weapons industry. There is more than the actual development itself. There is much more than the actual development itself. The information, the networks, everything is trying to snap into place to a degree to where I don't know if there's going to be a way to once you have orbital weaponry, and the idea becomes very much dystopian in terms of what could happen when these very mentally ill people gain the power to essentially attack whole cities or nations from space. We have politicians that have definitely proven that they are willing to sell out their populace, right? If you look at a tremendous indicator for this right now is the prevalence of data centers in places just around the country, even though they are unpopular to the actual population of people, right? We have data centers in places that cost taxpayers money. If you ever question the idea of us living in a functional oligarchy, that's what you can point at. That's what you can really understand. Data centers. They don't have any. There is no organic movement in terms of a large amount of the population that is really gunning for data centers. It is a primarily a financial incentive for a politician to give these people tax breaks to make their particular city or state more appealing to people looking to build data centers. A good analogy that I'm thinking about here is the idea of how the West Indian Company, I believe it was called, it was essentially the company that, or the British company that ruled over India for however long they ruled over. I forget exactly how long, but these people, they couldn't just, like, this company, it started with just this one rogue, or not one rogue, but just this one company with military powers to protect their routes and the actual, going to and from Britain and protect their ships or whatever. And the idea was that they couldn't just take over India. That wasn't a thing. They couldn't do it because I believe it was called the Mughal Empire. It was too powerful. They could not overtake it. It wasn't feasible. But at some point, there was conflict, and the company took advantage of that conflict, and they took advantage by essentially just creating contracts with royalty in various portions of India. And I think these contracts were literally called the unequal contracts. But what these contracts did was they saved, like, the royalty was able to save face through these contracts, and essentially sell out their populace piece by piece through these contracts. And that's how essentially the entire nation became under the rule of Britain. They didn't have enough people on the ground. They didn't have anything like that. They had essentially royalty, or just royalty that was willing to sell large amounts of royalty, that were willing to sell out their populace so they can save face. These politicians today we need to understand that they are the people that will sell us to anybody and everybody and any of their donors. As long as nobody knows about it, right? As long as nobody is really looking at it, as long as it's not in the newspapers, even if it is, honestly, it's getting very scary at this point. And despite the libertarian veneer that many of these guys use, the centralization of power is the main the main goal for a lot of these tech oligarchs, right? And Peter Thiel is obviously using the veneer of Christianity to, a Christian crusader against the Antichrist, to essentially promote the tools of the Antichrist. And I think he's been, thank goodness we kind of look at him crazy now, or at least most people do. But I think we have to understand that he's gained a level of success with the libertarian community as crusading as a savior of libertarian values, when he's just really looking for a way to dismantle and overcome the hurdles that he's facing in a democratic society, to where governments can still hold someone accountable. It's not about more freedom. It's not about more freedom for you, for the average person. It's about more freedom for him to control you. When we talk about this idea of freedom cities, it's another laughable thing in terms of when you really understand it, because particularly Bloomberg reported on it, and this is a quote directly from Bloomberg. The end game is audacious. High-tech company towns free from state law and most federal rules, including Internal Revenue Code, major environmental laws like the Clean Water Act and the Endangered Species Act, worker protections like the Fair Labor Standards Act, and the Occupational Health and Safety Act and the Affordable Care Act. We got a very big problem, and if you appreciate just the idea of trying to fight back in some sense, please subscribe for more, and I want everybody to understand this isn't a game. The technology that you're currently attached to for convenience and comfort, it is essentially the noose that you are tying around your neck. The more you give to these people, and just do the best you can in terms of really divesting from the system. And in any case, I will see you next time, and thank you for listening.